You're listening to episode 41 of the Confident Rider podcast with Jane Pike. Ellie O'Brien is in the house. So much fun. We've been chattering just prior to this and I was like, I think we should actually start with the recording so that we don't miss any of the goodness. Thank you for joining me today, Ellie.
Woo! Thank you for having me.
Super fun. So Ellie is the brains and genius behind Finesse Equestrian. And do you want to talk a little bit about what you do and your whole mission of being out there in the world?
Yeah, sure thing. Where shall I start?
At the beginning.
Go in depth.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I grew up with horses. My family wasn't horsey at all, but I got the opportunity to do lessons in pony club and got into show jumping. I guess just a brief background. I had an accident, broke my neck, and thought that that was the end of my riding career. Mm-hmm. So I sold my gear and my horse, and then a year went by of lots of tears, especially because my toddler at the time was into watching racing stripes. I would cry every time she watched that, and so I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm crying over a zebra. Yeah. I need to buy a horse. So I got a horse again, and then it was a couple of years later and I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Andrew McLean, and that was at the very first Equidays, and I also met the Double Dans. And so I spent a bit of time with them, and Dan James said to me one day, what's your dream? And I was like, I don't know at that stage. And it kind of hit me and it got me thinking, and I saw, I guess, the amazing stuff that they were doing. So I thought, I love horses. I've always wanted to work with horses, but because, you know, when you grow up, you're kind of told to get a job and, and be a real adult.
As someone that actually started doing a law degree, I can fully understand what it is that you're talking about. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, I was doing accounting.
Oh my God. There we go. If I can think of like two things which neither of us should probably be doing, it's like accounting and law.
Yeah.
I get like a dry feeling in my eyeballs just thinking about the boredom of that. Not any offense to anyone that's an accountant or a lawyer out there. I think it's amazing work, just not suited to my particular disposition.
Me too. Everyone knows my organisation is not great. So managing somebody else's accounting books was not a good idea.
Yeah. You're like, I think this adds up. Maybe this,
Yeah. But I discovered that I did have a good way with horses. So I came away from that and things just kind of fell into place. I had never heard of horsemanship prior to that, and all of a sudden Brenneman documentary came into my life, and I watched that, and I was just like, wow, this is amazing, because the mare that I had at the time was a bit of a problem type of horse.
Yeah.
And so I watched that and I was just like, wow. And so I started Googling and found Buck's website, and then it just so happened the next weekend Buck was going to be in Topol, which is like an hour's drive away from where I live. So
the universe was lining up.
It was, yep. So I got along to that and watched it, and then I thought, well, that's what I want to do. So I volunteered to a trekking company that was local to here. They had like 90 horses, and I bought Buck's DVDs and I watched them religiously, and then went out and started a whole bunch of horses for the trekking business.
Nothing like getting in there and doing it. My word.
Just throwing myself in the deep end. So that was kind of the beginning of it all. And since then, I think meeting other really cool trainers, and just kind of added on to everything that I've done, and now it is where it's at now.
Yeah, amazing. Isn't it funny? I was just thinking when you said that you didn't have any kind of understanding of horsemanship or anything prior to that. I had a thread come up from a Joyride member in the group who was saying about they were interested in studying certain methods and had different apprehensions about it. And I actually said in the thread, like, I don't know how I rode before I knew what I knew now. Like, even just the principles of it or the behavioral understanding, it's like I must have been riding along on a wing and a prayer, because it just feels like without that toolkit to unpack things or to understand motivations, you're kind of just adding layers of misunderstanding on misunderstanding. That's what it feels like from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I think that I was lucky as a kid to have bravery
Yeah.
on my side, and kind of just this will to do things. And
Yeah.
I think fortunately through that I was never horrible to our horses. We didn't grow up with, like, abuse or anything.
No.
I kind of just like had to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You just did it.
Yeah. And then I think, but because of my bravery, I also ended up getting hurt quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
And so ultimately that led me to searching for a better way of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so present day, you've got your own business and online programs, and you're working with horse riders all over the place. Do you want to talk a little bit about what it is you're doing now?
Yeah, sure thing. So I guess over the last 19 years, I have been starting horses and working with, I guess, what is known as problem type horses. And then I developed into doing clinics and lessons, and which I still do nowadays. And then I decided that I wanted to be able to help more people that were outside of my area. So I just started videoing the work that I was doing with the horses that came in, and we created a little Facebook group, and it's kind of just grown since then, which has been such a cool thing, because I created it thinking, well, just my mum and dad will join it and what's wrong.
Thanks, Mum.
Yeah, liking every video.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really neat to be able to see the impact it's had. And I think sometimes I get a bit of a fright when I have somebody contact me, it might be from a different country, and they've been following along, and they'll say how the videos or blogs have helped them in a situation. So yeah, it's really, really cool.
Really cool. And one of the people that you've helped is me. Ellie is one of my circle of awesome, or like my square squad, that I'm always like, Ellie, so talk to me. What do you think about this situation? And when I was starting D, I started with your Start Your Own Horse course, which is a miracle resource. And if anyone's out there wanting to start their own course and kind of lacking a little bit of guidance or a framework of how to do that, then I really recommend Ellie's course. Can we talk a little bit about the starting process and what your philosophy is behind it and that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I started the Start Your Own Horse course because I was getting a lot of horses come to me that had been sent away to be, want to read a word, broken in, or started, and they came back broken. And so these people were just devastated because, they'd put so much into raising them to the point that they were ready to be started under saddle, and then just absolutely gutted when the horse came back with issues. And then they'd end up sending the horse to someone like me to then try and fix all those problems, which takes twice as long, because you have to undo it and then reteach it. And so that was kind of one of the drivers behind, well, let's create this program so that people can start their own horses.
Yeah.
Because I think when you have the tools, it's no different than teaching anything else to your horse. Like maybe if you're a jumper, you're teaching them to jump a bigger jump, or if you're a dressage rider, maybe it's that you're teaching them shoulders in. So it's no different than that, but it's just the very beginnings of it all.
Yeah.
And I think when we get those foundations right, the big stuff just happens so easily as well.
Yeah, it's been such a fascinating process to go through. I know that I've learned so much by understanding all the little pieces that feed into bringing a horse under saddle. And as well for me, just in relation to the specifics of the course, I felt that from a competency position, I could manage starting my own horse. But having not done that before and not having anyone around me that could guide me through the process, that framework of operation, if you like, of like, this is where we're starting, this is what we're looking for, you know, this is where we're progressing to, was so useful. And yeah, just to confirm that again, if you're in a similar position, then I really recommend this. A lot of your work as well is so much based on working with the horse, or all of it's based on working with the horse, but finding that spot below threshold so that we're not taking them into a place that's reactive or where they feel like they have to respond in a way that puts either of us in a compromised position. Are there specific things you're looking for when you're working with your horses, or do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure.
I
So
know it's a really general question. I was like, as I was saying it, I'm like, this encompasses like 100 years of podcasts, but let's throw it out there.
I think one of the big things that, so in the early days, I think I really focused on the skills side of it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've grown and developed more and probably worked on myself a lot more as well, I've realized that like there's the mind, the body and spirit, like it's one package.
Yeah.
And through the starting process, we've got to take all of that into account so that we don't lose part of the horse.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's what makes them so awesome. And you know, you kind of, I mean, we've all been on, say, maybe like a riding school horse or a trekking horse, and they might do all of the skills, but they lack that life about them.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've really tried to integrate into my work, is making sure that that I've got a happy horse, mentally, physically, and but then that they can also do the skills as well.
Mm-hmm.
Does that kind of go into a little bit of what you were?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I remember when I was making the decision about Dee, about, you know, how to move forward with the whole starting process, one of the big things that was so important to me was like maintaining his spirit, like you say, like maintaining that joie de vivre, because he's such a people horse, if you like, and you know, he's really interested and curious, and I didn't want to kill that off. And so that was a huge motivation for doing it myself, because what I also realized just through going through this whole learning process that has been the last decade is the ridiculous assumptions and expectations we have on trainers through the starting process to produce this result, quote unquote, within like a 2 or 3 week period.
Yes.
And now having gone through that myself, where it's like, I don't even, like, we've been going for a while, like this has been a long process, and I just consider us right at the start. And I think that had he been in a position, like I've got what would predominantly be seen as like a relaxed and, you know, happy horse right now, but I can see all the little steps along the way where it was like a sliding doors moment where it could have gone really wrong, and he could have developed something which would have become a bigger thing along the line, purely because there was a time crunch, or we were like going to do that thing and it needed to be followed through on.
Yeah, definitely. It was really amazing when I was creating the program, and I kind of had my wall plastered in all of the little exercises that I do. And it took up a wall, and it was quite an eye-opener. And I wish I'd taken a photo of that to show people, to make them aware of, like, when you're sending your horse away to, if you do choose to send them away to be started, to fit all of that into, like you say, 2 to 4 weeks, is you're going to, if you put time on it, you've got to lose something else.
Yeah.
And generally that's the spirit, that's the mind element, because you've got to cram in those skills, which can be done, it is done, and horses come out the other side of it with the ability to do all the things, but I think you definitely lose a part of their spirit when you do that.
And inevitably, from my experience at least, depending on the competency of the person that's then carrying on the task as well, and what you're happy to deal with along the line, you know, that tension doesn't dissipate, like it goes somewhere. So if you're creating tension as a result of enforcing these skills along the way within a compressed time period, inevitably, out of the blue, something happens as kind of like an expression of that cup overflowing, it seems to me anyway.
Oh, totally. And it's so interesting in how horses show that in different ways.
Yeah.
My little horse Chrome, he's been really interesting, and it was a bit of a lesson for myself because a couple of years ago I decided to get him ready for the top talent for Equidays, and so we had a time crunch on that, and through that process I lost a little bit of him. Thankfully I was able to be aware of that and get it back again, but he kind of showed me that in a way that all of a sudden his energy when I was riding him, it would go out through the outside shoulder. And I thought, that's because he's thinking of being way out there. And so I think sometimes it's not always a big thing like the buck or the rear or the bolt or biting, or maybe all of a sudden they have gut issues. It can be in those tiny little things as well.
Yeah. Or even in introversion, you know, like it might not be something that's like physically animated, but just more that shut down way of responding to life. Yeah. Which interestingly seems quite difficult to bring back out again. It's like a very much a coaxing process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes I found clicker training has been such a godsend with horses that are quite introverted, or they've at least been taught to go internal.
Yeah, so true. I had a real turning point when I introduced the clicker as well. I actually just made me laugh. This is totally unrelated, but and this is not a example of good clicker training. This is a poor execution of an excellent tool by myself, where I was trying to reinforce coming back from the canter with D. And I thought, and I hadn't done any preparatory work. So I just was like, I'd use the clicker on the ground, but not under saddle. And I thought, well, I'll click when he comes back down to the hold. And so we ended up looking like a car bunny hopping around the ring, because he was like going into canter and then stopping and going into canter and then stopping, waiting for the click. And I was like, I have done this really incorrectly right now. And it just, if you looked out the window, there was us kind of like this like little sort of leaping around the ring, which was quite hilarious to watch. But anyway, a complete side story to that little example of how not to do it.
I can just imagine it.
Yeah.
Hey, you learned something through the process.
Exactly. And it also shows the efficacy of it if with the motivation, you know, there's definitely, it's so quick to pick things up with that positive reinforcement. So sure. Amazing. We were talking before as well about something you've been working with, which is that connectivity between mind and body, and introducing, I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but I guess like body awareness through your own hand placement somewhere on their body. Would that be the right way of doing it? And then introducing movement at the same time, so you're kind of like integrating those two pieces together.
Yeah, shall I tell the story?
Tell the story, because I just did a bad job of it.
No, that's cool. So it must have been a couple of years ago now. I had a horse come to me who was he's very, very well bred and has extreme talent as well. But he was always lacking the mental aspect. And so that had manifested in that he would colic often. He would colic at dinner time, he would colic if he was changing paddocks. He was just a mess mentally. And so when he came to me, we decided to get some body work done, you know, kind of check off all of the boxes. And I think it might have been in his first session, I watched the body worker do some work. She was trying to do some work on his face, because you couldn't really touch his face. let alone get a bridle on. And he's over 17 too, and she tried to sort of touch his face, and he just ran her down. And naturally, she kind of tried to block him and to send him away from that, because, you know, who wants to be run over by 17 plus hands of horse? And when I observed that, I kind of thought to myself, I wonder what would happen if I just moved with him. So, and some of the work that we had been doing, and she had been doing was the Masterton work. And so the next time I was out there with him, I kind of just put my hand on his face, and so kind of on his cheek. And just as he had done with her, he went to run me over. So he obviously practiced it a lot.
Yeah.
He'd kind of run his shoulder into you. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to keep my hand there, but I'll just move with him. And so he put a lot of force into my hand, and we just moved together. And I think we probably moved together for a couple of minutes, and then he came to a stop and just like started yawning, rolling his eyes back into his head, and started to like breathe really deeply. And, you know, like his nose got runny and just these massive releases. So I was like, that's interesting. And so I kept on repeating that process, and we got to the point where I could have my hand all over his face, and he was totally happy for me to be there then. So then I started introducing it into other parts of his body, like down his neck. And what I would do is I'd get him moving, and then I would sort of just place my hand anywhere and look to see, you know, like, is there something, I'd ask the question basically of like, how do you feel about me being here? Practicing mindfulness and breathing and not holding on to anything myself. But then I guess kind of like things came up as well, then sitting with it for a bit as well. And so yeah, I kind of did this all over his body, and including his belly, because I knew that he had the gut issues. And it was just phenomenal to see the things that were going on. So what I kind of likened it to is when we found places that there was tension that he was holding on to, it was like we were just bringing awareness to that area. And then he was able to release it, and then whatever it was there would kind of dissipate.
Yeah.
And one really cool part about it is he no longer had to be on any of the supplements he was on for the gut health. He stopped colicking, and when I moved him to a new property, he hadn't colicked for months at this point, but on this day that we moved him, he kind of went into colicking, and I went out and he was running around, and he'd drop to the ground and thrash around and get up and kind of repeat it. So I went into the paddock, and he came running over to me and kind of like swung his belly towards me. And so I put my hand on his belly and just practiced breathing and being mindful. And we stayed there breathing for maybe around 5 minutes, and then he dropped to the ground and slept like a deep sleep. I don't know how long it was, but it was a decent amount of time. And he got up and praised, and he's never colicked since that day. So
wow, that's a phenomenal story.
Yeah. So that kind of just blew my mind with this work, and so I practice it with every horse that I'm working with.
Yeah. So I need to back the truck up because I need more information on this. So when you start, the point between you starting to work with him and being aware of like the jaw and everything that was happening there, how long would you say, were you doing that daily for a period for a while before you noticed a change, or were these releases happening pretty spontaneously?
Straight away.
So interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. And what I noticed, like for him, if I did those sessions with him every day, it was almost like it was a bit overwhelming for him.
Yeah.
So him, I had to kind of adjust, and I would maybe do it every other day. But I've noticed some horses like to have it every day, maybe just at the start of the session for 5 or 10 minutes, or even less if that's all you've got. Maybe you just want to bring awareness to I don't know, Chrome, my little pony. He tends to get a lot of tension in his pole area, so most days we'll start off a session just with bringing some awareness to that area and asking the question, how do you feel about me here? And for some horses, you can have your hands on and you might have to be quite light. Other horses like Ace, he wanted to like lean into that pressure. And then some other horses, you can't even get close enough to put a hand on them. So it's just about asking the question and listening and adapting to whatever they need in that moment.
So cool. It's we said before, it's slightly similar in principle to the Masterson method, which, although different, but same but different in lots of ways. Yeah. And I've been working with Dee doing I did the bladder meridian technique, for those of you who are aware of Masterson method, and then the cervical stretch as well. And it was interesting, like the first time he went from pretty relaxed, like I took him down to the arena and it was just no biggie. And then to the right, like his response was just so OTT. I was like, wow, it's really interesting to see where these patterns of tension exist with very subtle, or, you know, just like bringing awareness to certain parts of the body, like you say. And so I thought, okay, I'll do this at the start and end of each session. And he was having some really big releases as well. And then today and yesterday when I did it, it was literally like his eyes were all dreamy and blissful, and he was really getting into it, and it actually felt reciprocally, is that a word? Like in reciprocation, I felt really relaxed too. And what it's been highlighting for me is the feedback loop we get, so that when I notice an area of tension in his body, I tend to feel it as well. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's just relax that area, and then what it is that I offer back is a release, I guess. And it's really interesting to see how that feeds into each other.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. That's a good point as well, is making sure that you're not holding that tension in yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's maintaining that internal awareness at the same time as you're doing something outside of yourself. It's quite the skill to develop.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Recently I was working with a lady, and oftentimes, like, so with her horse, he when we brought awareness to the tension that he was holding in his jaw, it's funny, isn't it? There's these places where lots of horses tend to hold lots of tension.
Yeah.
But he got very angry in it, and he kind of wanted to nip at her and try and really push her around. And she said to me, like, that really got her anxious in that moment. So we talked then about, like, that's his stuff, and you can hold this space for him to be able to work on his stuff, but it doesn't mean you have to get dragged into it.
Yeah.
And so that was quite cool, like holding that space, but having just that slight separation as well, to let them go through and process whatever they need to release, whether it's like a physical thing or it's an emotional, mental trauma from something that's happened in the past. But I thought that was important part to note as well.
Really important. Yeah, that transference is something that, you know, if we don't have the awareness, we can get the same with people, right? You get like sucked into their emotional cycles. And I wonder, and this is just something that I've been playing with lately, like if they offer an energy, so like if there's a feeling that you get in response to something. So for instance, like you hold a part of the body and there's a push, or you're asking, for instance, with the cervical stretch, I'm just asking very gently for the nose to come towards me that way. And I feel the quality of that touch underneath my hands, like he might be a little bit resistant, or there might be a softness to it. And then I notice what that does to my body, like my arms and my shoulders, that resistance, do I pick that up? Which inevitably we do, you know, we sort of like feed back with the same quality of touch that we're offered. And so what I've been concentrating on is like releasing that in my body and then offering something different back. And it's been really effective, actually. Whether it's, you know, something I can explain in more tangible terms, I'm not sure, but it definitely makes sense. And I guess, sorry, I'm on a stream of thought now. I'm like going for gold.
No,
no, like if you get someone, you go to have a massage, or there's just some people who are really tactile and they feel really comforting to be around, you know, like those sorts of people. And they'll either like put a hand on your shoulder or give you a hug, and you think, oh, like it's just something really intrinsically relaxing about that touch. And so I've been thinking about that and thinking, well, if you can offer back that sort of quality, even in response to resistance or tension, you it's almost like an alchemy, like you can't resist it. It's like, oh, because it feels better.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that as you're talking as well. That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's what I've been playing with, like in terms of the quality of feel on the reins and just in the quality of feel in the body. And it's been really useful for me, because then you think of yourself as having agency as well. Like you can actually, through the touch and through the physical connection, there's an ability to kind of adapt things.
Yes, and you can even see that. And say I was talking to somebody the other day, and she was riding a horse, and she said, oh, you know, the horse just tanks off on her and it's quite strong, and it's easy to get into that pattern of really holding on to that horse, when what we could do is, like you were saying, is offer up a really gentle, like soft, light hold, feel of the reins, and see what do we meet with then.
Absolutely, yeah. And just thinking as well within the quality of that, like in order for something to be pulled, there has to be a resistance. So if you're not offering the pull, there's nothing to pull against. It's like, and I use that metaphor all the time, not just in writing, but like in like personal communications as well. Like if someone tries to be sort of you know, communicate with you in a way that's like a little bit abrupt, you can buy into that and create like the cycle, or you can be like, well, if I don't feed that, then there's nothing actually to bounce off here.
Yeah.
Tangent, which inevitably our conversations do.
So where were we? I guess it's also linking it back around to the horse that I was talking about in the beginning, when he wanted to have that fight and lean into it, instead of fighting back to him, thinking, well, let's just go with this, and a completely different result. So
yeah. And I love as well that it's something that he sought out. Like that's a whole repatterning of his nervous system from the start. It's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, it's really neat. Even my mind kind of just flipped to, I was teaching a clinic, and there was a horse that I was holding, and he kept coming into my space. And when I first started horsemanship, we would have sent that horse out of our space, because this is my bubble, and you know, safety, and you need to be out there, which is great, and it has its place. But also, one of the ladies picked up on that this horse kept coming into my space, and she said to me, "Why aren't you sending him out of your space?" And I said to her, well, he might be trying to tell me something right now, and because he kept on coming in and kind of rubbing his head on me. And so then it kind of started a discussion of, you know, we need to be listening to our horses, and maybe through that horse coming into my space and rubbing his head on me, maybe he's trying to say, like, I've got a headache.
Yeah.
I need to have some relief somehow. So when we start listening a little bit closer, and asking better quality of questions, then I think we get better answers as well.
Yeah, so true. So true. So personally, you've got Chrome up and going, your little amazing mini Valegro, mini V.
I was like, oh, why have I called him that? That's like some big boots to live up to. Like,
I think it's working for you.
Yes, people are really going to look at us.
So what are your personal aspirations? What have you got going on at the moment?
So at the moment we are competing level 1 dressage. At the end of last year, we registered and we got off to a bit of a rocky start, unfortunately. He's been really affected by the grass.
Hashtag grass affected the whole of New Zealand, sighs in exasperation.
I know, it is hard work. So currently he's living off the grass completely. And when he's off the grass, he's my cool pony. On the grass, he is a kite and very embarrassing.
Yeah. Like, Chrome, I have a business to run and this is not helping my cause right now.
Yeah, but we seem to have things under control now. So he's doing really well. We've just started getting back out and about again, competition. So we had a show last weekend. We've got another one, big show this weekend. And then possibly Horse of the Year as well. So that's kind of where I'm working and really making sure that we maintain our foundations throughout it all, and that I don't lose that, like you were talking about with Dee, the curiosity and the want to be together. And one of the things that came up last week is I was having a lesson, and Maggie Lees, who we've just started working with, she is super cool. She said to me, you both try really hard. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we can get sucked into is keeping on pushing for more, which I think can suck the want and the try out of everything. So that's something that throughout our bid to compete and to do well, that we have to be mindful and bring awareness to being good enough in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you so are. I mean, I've been trying to invite you down to my newly formed community of equestrian awesomeness for ages, and still you're living on the North Island. But I'm glad you've got good people in your corner up there.
One day my little island will come to life. This has come up a lot actually in the last interview I did with Elsa. I was trying to pitch to her to join my community as well, of like, I've got the vision, it's sort of circular, we're all living in our little independent houses, the horses are in the middle, we all meet in the arena. It's amazing in my mind. I love that idea.
It's a beautiful temperature. That's the other thing I've got going on. Surface is beautiful. Honestly, I think there's a lot of pluses going for it. A lot of pluses. Yeah. Consider it. Anyway, think about it. Yeah.
It will happen one day.
Exactly. So, given all this awesomeness, there are going to be people who want to find you. Where is the best place that they can either work together, or if they want to do the Start Your Own Horse course, where can they find that?
If you just type in my name into Google and Finesse Equestrian, then we will come up the website, Finesse Equestrian. And I'm pretty active on social media as well, so Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, and I'll put all the direct links in the show notes as well if people want to jump on and zoom straight over. I love all your posts on Facebook. We were just talking about how difficult it is sometimes if you have your own online business, how you kind of get into nurturing that and then you miss some of the stuff that's coming up through other channels. So I always love seeing your posts come up.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you so much for this. I could talk all day, but I have to cut it off because I know you have small people and other people to go back to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. So much awesomeness. Thank you for hanging out with us today and also tolerating my somewhat croaky voice. If you want to find Ellie, you can check out her website, www.finesse-equestrian.com. Social media wise, she is on Facebook by searching for Finesse Equestrian Training and on Instagram at Ellie A. O'Brien. If it's me you're after, confidentrider.online is the place to find me. Okay team, have a fabulous day and I will catch you on the flip side.